The new player experience in Dead by Daylight is something that's always been sort of kinda not great. With any other game, a player with 500 hours, you would think, oh, wow, they play this game a lot. Baldur's Gate 3, my game of the decade, on its release, I have 300 hours in. With Dead by Daylight and its constantly expanding roster of killers to play as and against, perks to learn their effects, counters, and how they interact with each unique killer, situation, and survivors, there is a lot to learn. Dead by Daylight, at its core, does not have a very good tutorial outside of the extreme basics. How to do a generator, basic commands, and how to hook survivors as the killer. A new player is thrown straight into the deep end, and if this player is brought into games by their friends who already play the game, they are thrown directly into the Mariana Trench without a life preserver. The ability to get good and how to, improve your gameplay is all out of client. And today I'm just going to be talking about what could possibly be done by behavior to make this type of thing better for newer players in an effort to make player retention better. Section 1. The new player experience. First off, we are going to rework universal perks to be useful instead of just kind of being whatever. Currently, Dead by Daylight has 5 free killers, 7 on console, and 7 free survivors, 9 on console, when you boot up the game for the first time. Trapper, Wraith, Billy, Nurse, and Huntress, with Hag and Doctor for console, and Dwight, Meg, Nia, David, Bill, Claudette, and Jake, with Ace and Fung on console. I do actually believe that behavior lowering the costs of older killers and survivors that they've been doing recently has been really good. Gotta give them credit where it's due. However, until you get a character to Prestige 1, all you have to work with are that character's perks and universal perks. And universal perks aren't the best. Who genuinely uses This Is Not Happening? Or Shattered Hope? Universal perks aren't even niche or excelling in a certain area. Most of them just suck, even compared to other universal perks. Things like Deja Vu, Hope, No One Escapes Death, and Spies from the Shadows, compared to things like Premonition and Dark Sense, or Shattered Hope and Unrelenting. Bad perks should be brought up to properly match the strengths or fairness of other perks, especially seeing as these are the only perks that new players will be allowed to use for a good amount of time. Next up, we would be simplifying the emblem system and making the monthly grind easier. This would allow for newer players to get blood points much more easily and unlock perks for all of their characters much more easily as well.
And that's the key, right? Skilled play leads to wins. If they don't, are they really skilled plays? Right? If your skilled play doesn't get you to win, was it really a skilled play in the first place?
This statement is still kind of a pretty good example of what's wrong with the mentality of how Dead by Daylight is designed. Survivors can be wholly altruistic, die for their team, make sure their team gets a 3 out every single game, and they are still punished by the MMR system? Killer at least makes somewhat more sense as, more kills does equal doing better, sure, but I think that it, being the pip and emblem system, at least rewarded hooks more than kills. I don't think incentivization of kicking a player out of the game to need pressure is a good design choice necessarily, especially against newer players lacking an anti-tunnel or looping skill, who will just get a 3-minute game every time they load up because they play against a killer who's better. There isn't a ranked mode in Dead by Daylight.
If a survivor escapes alive, that's a win for the survivor. Killer kills a survivor, that's a win for the killer.
I genuinely believe that an 8-hook, 0-kill game takes more skill than a 3-hook, 1-kill game. The emblem system is inherently flawed in that regard, but especially the survival category that is extremely feast or famine. You either escape or you don't. It would be cool if we just rework that category where if your team gets out, you'd get points in that, because, you were a part of their escape. It's a team game for survivors. And honestly, reward caps on emblems could be removed or even doubled per category, because as someone who runs the killer, or, someone runs the killer the entire game could get less blood points than someone who holds the generator button for 5 minutes and escapes while their teammate is looping. Another thing I would like to see is allowing for players to try out new killers in custom games against bots before buying them. I think allowing for players to try out a killer for a game or two against bots would be a great benefit. I really like the idea of the Splinter offerings. I understand they were removed in the past due to hackers abusing them and forcing people to play as the killer, so I think this is a nice little middle ground. A lot of players have fond memories of being able to try out a killer before, like, you know, fully committing to buying them, and this would be coming back in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just against bots while learning or trying them for the first time. In a vacuum, I think Splinters would be cool to return, assuming that hackers just like couldn't do that anymore. I don't know if that's like a possible thing, but if it was a thing, just make the Splinter like not even an offering, just be like, okay, Splinter, I use this on my killer, I run Adept, and then there you go. I can play it in a game for whatever. Again, I'm not a game designer, I'm just here for the ideas. Next, there should be an in-game explanation for how every single killer works in client. This is the important, in the Dead by Daylight client. I should be able to click play, go to the tutorial, like new section thing, and find out what things do. It shouldn't be required to open a wiki to understand how half the role of a game works in a multiplayer game. I genuinely think that's crazy. Despite my issues with MOBAs in general, like, you know, Dota, League of Legends, Heroes of the Storm, etc., the character menus for them are fantastic. You have a rundown of every killer's abilities, their talents in the games that have them, and what they can do, as well as their numbers. Dead by Daylight kind of has this with, like, the killer height, speed, etc. in killer bios, but there's never an explanation past a wall of text. Some people, like me, honestly, are visual learners. Videos demonstrating each killer in Dead by Daylight, again, in client, would go a long way towards helping new players, or even offering Bloodpoint rewards for watching through the how to play against killer, or how to play as killer videos, so new players would get rewarded for learning. Just put that in the tutorial section, and then you get like a little, you know, here's how to play against them. Oh, you struggle against this killer, you know, here's like an easy tutorial for this killer, here's a medium tutorial, here's like a hard tutorial, and then it would be all sorts of things talking about the killer, all their techs, how to counter the techs, how to play against them, and just in general reward learning and skill. I think that would be great. And then, of course, you would improve upon the tutorial itself in general, past the extreme basics. This could be placed in the, again, advanced tutorial section, where Survivors players would be taught to be better by tutorials about what looping is, resource management, zoning, better game sense, etc. I will admit that when I first started playing Dead by Daylight, I had no idea what running the killer was. I would throw pallets outside of chase because, well, they can't get me if there's a block of wood in the way, and then I can get away quicker, type of thing. Killers probably really loved playing against me. And yes, genuinely a skill issue, but I don't think a tutorial teaching you how to play should avoid teaching you more things in the game. I knew how to throw a pallet, but I never got told, hey, maybe you should save that pallet for when you're in chase to stun the killer. And I don't really think the loading screen tips do a whole lot, honestly. Like, it's just stuff like, oh, press space to hit a skill check. It's like, I even used to think that the exposed status meant the killer could see me. And with that as a lovely segue, I'm now going to talk about better in-game tooltips for what does what. Currently, there is no place inside the DVD client to just read what things do. Sure, you can just go perk by perk, but there isn't like a list of status effects, what they do, examples of what causes them, etc. Also, the in-game tooltips, again, just aren't really that useful. The ones that says, here's the killer you're facing, like the first few times, like that's nice, I guess. And then after that, there's nothing to go to learn about what they do, really, except, again, out of the client. And I think that they should put more stuff in the client. Just have more info in-game regardless. Tooltips could be the things that apply past just do generators to escape level of tips. I would also like another thing where you could sort perks based off of what they do. For instance, perks would be sorted with tags such as generator, aura, killer info, etc. Perks could have multiple tags, like deja vu could be a generator and information tag. No one escapes death could be an end game lethality hex tag. And then you could pick and choose tags to sort by in the perk menu, seeing as how there's over 7 pages of perks at this point. The ability to sort them around by what you need at that moment would be pretty big, and newer players would be able to find things that do what they'd want them to do. The current search bar is okay, it's just very, very bare bones. That only really works on finding keywords and names. The tag system would be added as well as the search bar for those looking for perks to do certain things instead of looking for an exact perk. So you'd be able to be like, oh, I need some slowdown. Let me type in slowdown. Oh, the slowdown tag, boom. Oh, deadlock, pain res, grim embrace. Wow, look at all my options. Like it would be great. Now, section 2, expanding upon communication. Currently, there really isn't a way for survivors outside of Swift, of course, to communicate with one another. The HUD elements for what a survivor is doing, which is relatively new, mind you, is very bare bones level of communication, and I think that a quick chat wheel would help shrink the gap between Swift and solo queue, as well as allowing players to communicate what's going on more easily. Even with simple commands, not necessarily the gestures like the point or the wave or the come here type thing, just like a command that would show text by the player saying it, such as I'm going for the save, or killer is on me, or do generators, would be an immense help. Of course, they'd make it so it isn't spammable, because I can already tell that someone's gonna get in chase. They're lasting more than 2 seconds. And it's do gens, do gens, do gens, do gens, do gens, do gens. Obviously with spam, repetition, etc. I think that bridging the gap between Swift with your friends and solo queue is important, because a lot of people do play by themselves, and I am not saying that you should get punished for playing with your friends. I think that you should be able to play better as a team without having to be in a call with your team. Section 3, Bloodpoint offerings being made universal within the role. Have you ever wanted to play another character because they just came out, or you like their aesthetic, or your last played simply isn't really speaking to you anymore, but you feel this weird obligation to play your old character until you get enough Bloodpoint offerings on the new character? This is also prevalent for players with more hours than newbies, of course, but it's still a fantastic change idea. Basically, all offerings that give blood points would be made universal within role. For example, survivor puddings, wreath offerings would be applicable when playing any killer, and you would have a pool to pull them from. Say I put 1,000,000 blood points on Nemesis, and I have a bunch of survivor puddings, but then I want to swap over and play Demo, but I've never played Demogorgon before. And then all my Nemesis puddings would be there, and I could use a pudding on the Demogorgon. It would be great. And then I would have survivor side have the same thing, all the survivor flower offerings, escape cakes, same deal. If I wanted to play Jill, P100 Jill, I have plenty of cakes, and then I wanted to go play Alan Wake or something, and then my Alan Wake is level 1, he has nothing, and I have no blood points, I already spent them all on Jill, she's my favorite, and then I could play Alan Wake because he would have this universal pool of blood point offerings to pull from. That would be fantastic, I think, personally, and it would make people not get stuck, for lack of a better term. If you have bloody party streamers and anniversary cakes, or, blood point offerings that can be gotten in either side's blood web, I would have those completely universal. So if I got a bloody party streamer on Jill Valentine, I could bring it while playing the Nemesis. And vice versa, of course. Sometimes I just want to be able to play any survivor I want, whether it's for a daily or a change of mood. Just want to keep playing my main, but I feel like it's a waste of blood points when I could keep leveling other characters. Add-ons and items for survivors as well could be transferable, because they are technically just skins, so you could keep your med kits and your maps and your add-ons and your offerings and all of that, because survivors really are all technically the same. So there's not really a reason you couldn't just put a big pool and put all your stuff in there and then access it from anyone in the pool. I think that would be great. It just kind of currently feels like you're leaving money on the table if you're not bringing a blood point offering. You know what I mean? It just kind of feels bad. Section 4, fixing invisible walls and collision. I will admit this is a little bit of a killer-sided issue, and I'm doing it for me because if you've seen any of my other series of Whipped Into Shape where I have to explain what the hitbox is, what you can and can't hit over, what makes sense, it could just really use a patch of just going over collision and making it make sense. Most of the time, hitboxes don't make sense on killers that rely on collision, like Hunter's Hatchet, the Nemesis Tentacle, the Xenomorph tail, I can think of a really egregious example right now on Yamaoka, where there's just an invisible hitbox that goes to the sky. Blight hitting walls that don't make sense. Same with Billy. Like, there's just a lot of inconsistent invisible walls, and that can be a pain point to players that are trying to learn. For new players specifically, this would mainly apply to like Hunters and Hillbilly, of course. Most maps just kind of need to be fully gone over, but invisible collision and losing hits as a result of invisible collision just kind of sucks, dude. Section 5, we are going to be updating the Shrine of Secrets. Currently, with a ballooning number of perks in Dead by Daylight, the Shrine of Secrets is just kind of not worth it. There are hundreds of perks in Dead by Daylight, and the Shrine has 4 spots. And sometimes those 4 spots can just be free perks. It should have more perks. Even double the current or more would make it much more worth it, as well as guaranteeing that free perks can't come to the Shrine would be nice. I don't need agitation in the Shrine of Secrets, I promise you. I don't need Nurse's Calling. I don't need Sprint Burst. Like, perks from free characters simply should not go in the Shrine, ever. With hundreds of perks in the game, having a weekly Shrine reset have free perks in it that many players just have already or just don't want it feels like kind of a joke and not a very funny one. It doesn't feel like a funny joke, it just feels kind of bad. For this, add more slots, remove the ability to get free perks in it, bada bing bada boom. Shrine of Secrets. For section 6, my last one, this is kind of a fun one, kind of a learning type of thing, kind of a getting more blood points type of thing. Like, it's a bunch of things rolled into one. Section 6 is going to be the random loadout button. This is a new thing, a new idea taken from Chaos Shuffle, except this would apply to both sides and simply allow for players to experience a wide variety of perks outside of a randomly selected mode. This would be a button on your build screen that would basically turn it into randomize your perk builds. It would give you a blood point bonus, and it would allow for people that want to experience Chaos Shuffle to not split queues, overall reducing queue times. Of course, Chaos Shuffle would still be a thing because, you know, everyone in the lobby to have random perks would be fun. But this type of thing would be decent for new players to learn a wide variety of perks year-round, find favorites outside of simple tier lists, and being able to try them without having to buy a character for a very limited resource, which is shards. Of course, I know behavior's trying to like get people to spend money and spend cells, but like realistically, people use shards for new characters. It's just how it is. And more perk variety for the game overall would be good. I'm sure that, you know, killers don't want to see like DS Unbreakable, Exhaustion perk, Gen perk every single game for every single survivor all the time, and then survivors don't want to see slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. Like, more perk variety for the game overall would be good. Of course, a lot of perks would need to be rebalanced because a lot of them are just abysmally terrible, but we covered that earlier when talking about universal perks. But in general, overall perks should be stronger, just not S tier meta picks, but there should be like a reason to run something like Desperate Measures when botany knowledge exists. A lot of things simply don't have a niche that they excel in, or they have a version of it that is simply better. Anyway, this has been horceror, trying to advocate for our game that we love to be the best that it can be. Is there anything I missed as far as improving the new player experience? What would you add if given the option? I'm going to be making this a series as I have a lot more ideas. So keep an eye out for that. I usually play Nemesis and make Nemesis content. This is just me kind of branching a little bit, seeing, you know, what my little feelers will find, and more widely related DVD stuff. So feel free to do all the YouTube stuff if you want to keep up with that. You know, like, comment, subscribe, it helped me a lot. I stream on Twitch 4 days a week, Nemesis 3 of those days, and our community Swift Night on Fridays. I hope to see you there. You can be part of the community. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye!